The meeting to order. If you will, please join me with the invocation and the pledge. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time we could join together and do the county's business. Ask you to just be present with us tonight. Help us make wise, sound decisions for the benefit of our community. Ask you to bless our efforts. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. And if you would like to participate, you have several opportunities to do so. We're going to have a citizens to be heard at the beginning of the meeting. You can speak either that one or the one at the end. You can also speak on each individual item. Please fill out a speaker card with Miss Jessica here for each item that you would like to speak on. This time, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda. I'd like to pull two things off the agenda. Consent agenda. Oh, I'll wait till you get the consent. Sorry.
We need to pull them now.
Yeah, go ahead and pull them now.
Okay, I'd like to pull number, where is it at? It's number 16 and number 24.
24? Yeah.
24. Any other changes?
I'll amend my motion then.
I'm going to pull item 17. So 16, 17, and 24. Modify?
amend my motion.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes. Citizens to be heard. All right. Miss Cheryl Ola, come on down.
There's only one. I'm going to use my title for a little bit. I'm Cheryl Ola, Wakulla County Tax Collector. I can say that a few more days, y'all. I just wanted to come in and give you a little overture of our past year. We did pretty good, and in fact, I have a copy of a check which I'll be giving to Mr. James, I guess tomorrow. So we're turning back in $17,268.46 to our reserve account for the tax collector.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Even though it was a rough year with the COVID, we had an extreme amount. I think that's because we were open in Leon County, we had people driving from all over. So we had an outstanding time this year with business. And as far as our driver's license, to help you with that also, prior we gave you $3,000. This past year we were giving you $4,500 per month. And as it's going right now, that will be increased to about $6,000 per month. So our driver's license and we're already restricting anybody from Leon County for driving tests. We do all others, but we only get $6.25, and we've had some pretty crazy drivers, so we are not doing any other counties for driving tests. No offense, but all the counties have pretty much come up with the deal that, if you live in their county, you test in their county. But if they come to renew their license, I will not turn them down for that. So that's where we stand on driver's license. So it's been pretty good, and in all of our other business, the concealed weapons, of course, are extremely over the top. After COVID, we had about 180-something appointments to make over those first month or two that we were kind of semi, and the department was not allowing them to issue them. But, of course, everybody wants a concealed weapon, so that has increased drastically. And, of course, everything else with our office seems to be going good, and I just pretty much want to say goodbye and thank you all. It's been nice working with you, and I'm not leaving. I'm not going away. You're probably going to see me some. But it's been a great career, and I cannot thank you. It's just been a really good time. And I'm looking forward to Lisa. She's so much smarter than I am, so she's going to provide you a lot more issues. We're doing like with the credit card. She's doing that now, so I think you're going to be very happy with the coming year. It looks like it's going to be really great. but thank you all.
Thank
And
you.
I've had a
Thank you,
great
Ms. Shirley.
time.
Yeah, thank you for your service. Best I can remember, Miss Cheryl has returned money every single year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that ends our citizens to be heard. We have no awards and presentations.
Consent?
Motion to approve consent. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, Chuck, you wanted to pull item number 16.
Number 16. So, over the years, I have been voting for using BP money for, and Restore Act for sewage infrastructure. I was under the impression that as we spent money for BP money, it would pay because the sewage system is an enterprise zone, it's supposed to pay us back for money spent. So I was under the impression, wrongly, that if we invested this money, we would get it back and we could reinvest it again in more sewage infrastructure. But the way it works is because it's a grant, it's being called and treated as a grant, we can't charge the growth to pay it back. So every time we take BP money to pay for infrastructure for growth, it's basically subsidizing growth. I can't support that.
Can you
No.
explain what you're talking about, Chuck? So you're saying we can't charge an access charge to like,
When we charge an access fee, it can't include any grant funds. We can't pay yourself back for grant.
yeah, which we couldn't in Wakulla Gardens because that was a septic to sewer.
That's a whole different thing. BP though is a one-time investment of
It's
money.
not a reimbursable grant.
Not a reimbursable grant, but basically if they give us the money,
Yep.
okay, we can't charge developers that amount to get ourselves paid back. That's not allowed.
We're not paying ourselves back. It was a grant from Restore Act.
It's Restore Act. And that's my problem, is that we have things that we need to spend this on. We need to sewer Live Oak Island. We need to put sewage infrastructure in downtown Crawfordville. And these are things that, the growth will not cover, because we've already got the houses there.
Is this particular item is to upgrade the effluent standards, right? Retrofitting this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is to take it to a higher level of standard to lower the nitrogen in the effluent on this particular item anyway.
On this particular item.
Yeah.
But I'm just, in general, I can't support spending BP money on infrastructure improvements where it should be going for things that we can't pay for by our tap fee. And this is one of the things we can pay for with our tap fee. We need to be paying for the things we have on BP by our tap fee and not using these one-time funds for things that we have a system to pay for it. And that's my problem. So I'm going to have to, until we come up with something like buying Talcon sewer and sewering Live Oak Island or building sewer systems down here in Crawfordville, I can't support using BP funds for these type of activities.
And they're kind of restricted on what we can use them for, right? The BP funds are.
Yeah, they do have restrictions on it, and this is one of the allowable uses of
Chuck, I appreciate your point and understand it. Motion to approve.
Do we have a second on that? We have a motion on the table. It's got a second, then we can do more discussion.
No, I'll second.
Okay. Chuck, are you saying that you think we should not take the funds, or you have some different way you would prefer to spend the funds?
I have different ways I would prefer to spend the funds. I would prefer to spend it on sewering Live Oak Island. I think that's an important thing for restoring our coastline. So that's a perfect thing for Restore Act money. That's the kind of thing we should be spending the BP money, because we can't charge the people on Live Oak Island, okay, the amount it will take to put sewer out there. Okay, there's just no way. So we have to be able to fund that through some funding mechanism from the county, and the one we have is the BP money. And if you want to take the Gulf Triumph money, the economic development money, and fund infrastructure, okay, I can see that, because that's promoting economic development. But this is for Restore Act, and these are the kind of usages I think we need to be using Restore Act dollars for.
Okay, very good. Any further conversation? Any citizens, Jessica? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Next, item number 17 on consent. I just wanted to have just a brief conversation that we've got the potential to receive a grant. We're required to follow the rules as imposed by the Boating Improvement Fund, which we've got an ordinance that's in conflict that says that we cannot allow swimming at a boat ramp if we're going to apply for this.
At this one boat ramp.
One boat ramp, and I understand that. What I talked to David, and what I would see if there's an appetite on the board, I'd like to see if we can explore a way to comply with that, but not ban swimming at all of Lower Bridge. You know, if you look at the Florida Boating Improvement Plan, it does say that you cannot receive or can't even accept an application if there's swimming allowed, but there's no distance requirement. Our ordinance has a 300-foot distance requirement, and so I don't think that our distance requirement should be the arbitrary default for us complying with their rules. So if there's a way for us to comply with that, go forward with the grant, then that would be my preference, and still allow swimming, you know, under the bridge in the area adjacent to the ramp, because there's swimming is allowed at TNT Hideaway that's 15 feet, you know, on the south side there, and so that would be my
Do a
preference.
lot of people swim there, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, they're not swimming laps there, but they might jump in after a hot day on the water and that sort of thing.
Is there any way to reconcile Ralph's concerns with?
It's something we definitely have to look at and tiptoe through the minefield, if you may.
I don't want to hold anything up. I mean, I'll do a motion to approve this, but ask staff to look in. I think what's your idea is valid.
And
And
I
if we
think-
can do it.
And what we're proving is to bring it back.
Yeah,
Bring it back
average
as
is
an
advertising.
order. Right, exactly. So we're not making that final decision tonight.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Citizens?
Tell me what we're approving.
We're just
The
approving
agenda item.
to advertise it to bring it back. And just giving staff to explore that option of allowing some swimming that would still be in compliance with the
So we don't lose the
Boating
grant.
Improvement Plan.
Are there any other boat ramps that we're going to be applying for grants for?
It's possible, we just don't, right now, we've got our allotment of money if we get this, so this is all we're focused on right now. So,
Is what we're doing tonight going to hold up the funding process at all?
no, y'all are advancing it
It's
forward,
advertised.
and you're advancing it forward, and that's all we need, and it gives us time to do some research.
We can argue about this again.
Right,
Yeah.
very good. All right, any further discussion? All for the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, Commissioner Hess, item 24.
Well, I make the same arguments again. Again, this is infrastructure that's being put in place to support growth, and it should be paid for by the TAP fee and not by BP.
Not to be too argumentative, Chuck, but this
Uh-huh.
lift station is connecting Wakulla Gardens.
It is, it's in support of the state,
It's pretty much necessary to support the state septic
to sewer
to
program.
sewer program, where we're doing a lot of work in Wakulla Gardens, and we'll continue. And by the way, it also accepts Shell Point, correct?
Right.
Okay, so motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Citizens? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. That ends our consent agenda. Public hearing, item number 21.
You mean 19?
19,
General business.
Let's get right over general business, isn't it? Back up.
Get used to this again.
Summer.
General business, item number 19.
This is a request for the board's direction regarding an application for reduction of code enforcement liens pertaining to case number CE 2018-3416. Back in January of 2019, the code board found the property located at 767 Wakulla Aaron Road in violation of the county's property maintenance code. The property remained non-compliant for 396 days, and at the end of that period, the property owner did make an application requesting a reduction in the accrued code enforcement lien based on exigent circumstances. The current lien amount for this property is just shy of $40,000, and if reduced by the board, the reduction would be $2,512.56. The Code Enforcement Board did recommend last month at their public hearing approval to reduce to the $2,500 figure amount payable within 60 days. This is a result of the staff's estimated cost for prosecuting the case plus 20% in compliance with the lien reduction ordinance. Staff notes some concerns with the request for exigent circumstances, which claims that one of the two property owners was incarcerated during the time of the code enforcement case, when in fact, based on the evidence provided, that individual was only incarcerated the day of the hearing and not during any other period of time in which the code enforcement case was being pursued. Staff is happy to answer any questions that you have.
What's the staff recommendation?
Staff is recommending denial based on the requirements in the lien reduction
We have an
ordinance.
ordinance we're supposed to follow, 2018-1. Does this meet item 1 that says applicant is not the owner at the time of the violation?
No.
I mean, that's the big thing. So I don't want to set a precedent here. I mean, I feel sorry for the people. It's a big lien, but every other one we've forgiven has been because somebody bought the property and remediated it.
Yeah, but from what-
Motion to deny?
Huh?
Are you making a motion?
I'll make the motion to deny it.
I'll second that.
I agree.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. I'm going to make,
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the property owner is here. I don't know that he's had an opportunity to fill out a speaker card, but it looks like you may want to address the board.
sir, if you'd like to speak, if you will, just when you're done, if you'll fill out a speaker card with Miss Jessica.
I just didn't know nothing about the fines and all that, because I was staying in Perry, and the address that they were sending it to was not the address that I was at. And then when I came back, then I found out all this stuff, and I've been trying to reside all this stuff, and I already had to take my kids out of school here, so that's 5 kids that I had to move back to Perry because it's too hard to just fines on that property. I was going to get the trailer out and try to get another trailer there, but then I got to pay this money, and I'm on Social Security, so it's kind of hard kind of deal.
Thank you, sir.
Do you send the notices, like return receipt or anything like that?
We do. The notices were returned. However, we also posted the property, which is legal notification under Chapter 162.
But it would be, we could assume that he didn't actually get the notice. Is that correct?
You could assume that. Yes, sir. The notices were returned as undeliverable, and if he had not visited the property during that period of time, he may not have seen the notices.
But from a legal perspective, the only thing you have to send it to the address that's on
Yeah, I
notice with
understand.
the tax collector and property appraiser, which you do.
Yeah,
We do.
that's really unfortunate, but
Well,
we have an ordinance that if we're either going to follow it or need to get rid of it.
I think it's his responsibility to keep the property record up to date with the property appraiser, but sounds like things were going on in life that was the least of his concerns. Could we make that? Could we consider that an exigent circumstance? If we know for a fact that, in spite of our best efforts, the notices didn't in fact get to him?
The property was posted, which is another legal means of providing notice under Chapter 162. We complied with Chapter 162 and did everything that needed to be done.
Yes, your answer is yes. That's up to us.
Well, and I'd also like us to
How did he pay
consider,
his property taxes if he wasn't, at the address listed?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that, but if you look at this property, the assessed value is less than the 25,000 homestead exemption. And so the amount of this lien is in excess of what this property's worth. Not that necessarily goes into our decision, but I think that it wouldn't make sense, it'd be a benefit to the people for us to have a fine that's in excess of what the property's worth.
And remember, if it's homesteaded, we can't enforce that lien anyway.
Right.
Just
So-
keep in mind from a precedent-setting standpoint, these are not unique notice issues. I mean, we comply with Chapter 162, and staff does whatever they can to get the notice out there, but notices get returned.
For various reasons.
For various reasons. To me, that it makes me a little bit uncomfortable that we're pushing exigent circumstances that far, because we may be creating it for a lot of other properties out there.
To do this, we need to do it for every
Well, and that's
single
my
one.
thing, if you've got a policy, you gotta follow your policy or not have the policy.
Exactly.
So, I feel bad for the gentleman and stuff like that, but if it's a policy and if we're not gonna follow it, then there's no use to have it, or either change it.
I don't disagree with that, but, you know, it states that the violation prevented timely compliance. First of all, someone has to know they're out of compliance in order for us to start a clock. And I understand we did everything from our standpoint, but sometimes life's not that clean.
According to our ordinance, like if they were to sell the property to somebody, that person could immediately come in, bring it in compliance, and ask for a code relief, which I'm sure we'd all vote for, and then the lien would get released. So it doesn't make the property worthless.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it may make it unlivable for them. I don't want to be in that situation. Further discussion? Hear none? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Passes 4-1. All right. Let's see. Item number 20, general business.
I just want to know what's that mean.
Your request was denied, sir. Sir, we have to go on with the meeting. You can check with code enforcement on that tomorrow. Item number 20.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This item requests board approval of resolution adopting the wastewater facilities plan for the implementation of wastewater system improvements and authorizing the execution and submission of wastewater facilities plan to FDEP for purposes of the state revolving loan program and approval to allow public comment. This is a PER, professional engineering report that we had contracted with Dewberry, and Dewberry consulted with Trevor's representing Dewberry. He consulted with BDI, Tyler's in the audience, as well as J. Jones Edmonds and Associates on some of the data that's in here, pricing, etc. We also, as a part of this program, it'll at the end of the day, as I was telling each of you today, at the end of the day in February, once Raftillis comes back with their recommendations on their rate study that they're doing, this data has went to Raftillis. We'll have a full, complete picture from the collection system, treatment system, disposal system, and financial side of the entire sewer fund.
This kind of goes back to Chuck's point earlier. The rate study is going to tell us what we really should have our excess charges.
That's right. And
I think it's too low. But
according to the first glance they've had at it and the first math they did, we're on target.
okay.
But now they didn't have these new numbers. This is a new number, so it'll probably go up a little bit. But anyway, this is a requirement that this professional engineering report will allow us to apply for funding elsewhere, and it is realized it's a 30,000 foot look and our analysis of our entire system. So with
Engineers
that,
are only slightly more entertaining than audit. President.
with that,
I'll do what I can,
We had a
Commissioner,
long
to
talk
entertain.
before this.
do we want to go and get a motion, or do we want to go ahead and just go
Let's
ahead?
get it over with. Let's
All right.
prickly pear and just
Thank
pull
you
it
for
out.
the introduction, David. Again, my name is Trevor Birch. I'm with Dewberry Engineers, and we were contracted several months ago to look at this issue in the county, what's going on with your wastewater system, and how to identify the problems and provide you some solutions to what's going on. Before we get into going over the report, I do want to talk for just a second about the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. That's the primary source of funding that we're going to be seeking immediately should you pass the resolution tonight that's before you. What the Clean Water State Revolving Fund does is it's a program that DEP provides. It provides very low cost or very low percentage-based loans to municipalities across the state of Florida. As we discussed with the folks at SRF, which we've consulted with them as we've gone through this whole process, it appears that you would qualify for any loans that would cover any design services at a 0.421% interest for a 10-year term, and any loans for construction would be at 0% interest for a 20-year term. It's a great way of being able to reduce the initial capital cost of a project that would be required to be expended during any given year. And again, that's why we're going for this. But as we go through this, we'll discuss that this report can be used to sort of shop out to other funding sources. We'll be discussing it with different available places and potentially reducing the initial capital costs that would be required by the county. So each one of these slides goes through a different section of the report as was provided to you. There's 9 sections in the report. So we're just going to briefly run through these just to make sure we have a good understanding of what's going on and what you'd be voting on tonight. Ultimately, the facilities plan was created to outline the system needs and provide you with alternative solutions for each one of those needs. We broke it into 3 sections based off of your system. You've got what we called the transmission system, which was anything to do with your force mains and your lift stations, your treatment system, which was the wastewater treatment plant at Otter Creek, and then your discharge system, which was your treated effluent, what to do with it, both reuse and disposal of the effluent. And this analysis period for the report is 20 years, so it looks basically from years 2020 to 2040, the needs of your system. And what we'll get to as we go through this is the projected cost of the improvements is $31,573,250, which we have phased out through the selected alternatives, so that that's not a cost that you're going to be seeing next year. It's something that we can phase out. And I'll discuss that a little further as we talk about each part of the project. Section 2 of the report is basically a summary of the project. It goes through and it talks about the different needs of the community. What we see in Wakulla...
Slide.
Oh, I must have double-clicked it. I apologize.
There you go.
There we go.
Chuck,
Double-click.
he keeps an eye on these things.
So what we've seen in Wakulla, and as you already know, is that you have growth coming from 2 factors. One is development moving into the county, and the other is natural growth of the sewer system by doing the septic to sewer projects and connecting those homes on. So it's more than just what you would see just through growth of people coming to the county. Another item that we saw as we were looking through it is you do have a consent order at your wastewater treatment plant, and it has to do with the nitrogen and the groundwater at the discharge site. So we know that something needs to be done with the effluent.
Now, part of that agenda item we talked about tonight, the retrofit, is to address that consent order, right, David? Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So
Not really.
Hmm?
The consent order is we need to reduce our amount.
That's in the
put at
retrofit, that
at the,
wastewater retrofit,
wastewater.
right?
Mhm.
We just voted on tonight that you voted against. That was to retrofit the plant to meet the consent order.
That helps get to the consent order, yes.
That's to put the water to,
That's the golf course. We had, our new plant met the, what is it, what's the standard it meets? Public access, right?
and advanced wastewater
AWT
treatment.
standards.
AWT
The
standards,
old
which is
plant,
the most
which is
stringent.
0.6 MGD, I think, the
It
old
was.
plant,
That's right.
it was not AWT standards.
That's right.
It was not.
Now, that grant we applied for tonight is going to retrofit it to meet AWT.
That's the change
standards,
order for that, yes.
which is the consent order requires us to upgrade
That's
to
right,
AWT
exactly,
standards.
yes.
Thank you.
So the needs that we saw as we looked through the system is we saw that your transmission system needs additional capacity. It also needs to have the pressures reduced. One thing that we've noticed is that each pump station that's required as new pump stations come online, they're having to be sized larger and larger, which impacts what's both upstream and downstream of that pump station.
Check valves getting blown out?
No, not to my knowledge, but it does create additional run times on the pump, and it also reduces the flow, as you know, when you have a higher head in the system.
If any pumps are deadheading?
There are some. It's actually a problem. It's actually a problem that it's been encountered near the Hickory Park lift station area. Not that lift station per se, but some of the smaller lift stations up in this area. When it kicks on, and some of the other larger pump stations, the smaller ones will run for a significant amount of time until one of the larger stations can kick off.
Is it just because the pump's not big enough in those smaller ones, or they're just not accurate?
Both. Yeah, they are undersized to be able to overcome the pressure that the system has. So you can put larger and larger pumps in so that it can overcome the pressure, but then you're creating a cycle that takes you down a road you don't want to go down.
David said it's called a paradox anomaly. I mean, you can just keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading pumps, but you'll never come to a point where everything, unless you break the line.
You will never overcome that. That's right.
So that's an issue that we discovered, and it's an issue that we tried to remedy through this 30,000-foot view through this report. Hopefully I can click it one time this time. There we go. So the Section 3 evaluates in depth the existing system. Just to give you an overview of what you actually currently operate, you have approximately 3,344 residential and 362 commercial customers, which based off of your per capita, you have about 8,500 people in the system that you currently serve. You have 88 different lift stations and force main that ranges anywhere between 2 inches to 12 inches currently. Your treatment system, once this project is complete, hopefully in the next month or so, you'll have 1.2 million gallons of treatment, and then when the project is further retrofit, I believe that would be completed in June. It would be at AWT standards. And then your discharge system, you're currently permitted to discharge 600,000 gallons of water at your spray field, which is adjacent to the Otter Creek wastewater plant, another 600,000 gallons at the golf course, the Wildwood Country Club. This map, which is a little difficult to see on the screen, but it outlines the current service area of the system. As you'll notice, mostly it goes along the 319 corridor. It also goes along Wakulla, Aaron, Spring Creek, and then services Sop Choppy, Panacea, and the areas along Surf Roads and Matches Sands is primarily where you service. And you have a lot of growth that's coming on in the Crawfordville area, which we had to look at the growth, and we use several different methods to do that. We look at the Bureau of Economic and Business Research. They provide different growth rates for every county in the state of Florida. We looked at some of your internal records, which were through plan reviews, certificate of occupancies, and then a spreadsheet that planning and zoning keeps up. And then finally, we looked at the historic flows at the wastewater treatment plant to project that out another 20 years. And you can see here the different growth rates that were determined by each one of those factors. To take the BEBR, the Bureau of Economic and Business Research, would be to understate what we're going to be seeing, because that only takes into account new growth, which we know we're also adding in what was septic systems, putting it on, converting it to sewer. So
all
yes,
this
sir.
is in our capacity analysis report also, right? Did Dewberry do that, or Jones Evans still do it?
No, Baskerville Donovan
did the capacity analysis.
So all that includes a lot of this information, right?
The information from the wastewater treatment plant flow was pulled partially from the capacity analysis report. I did do an independent review of it just to make sure that we were coming to the same conclusions, and it was very near what Tyler had come to. So
Want repetition of work, of course.
Exactly. But want to make sure that we're right, that we're hitting it. So if you take
You're projecting a 200% growth between now and 2040.
That's correct.
And you're getting that number from your historic flows?
We're getting that number from an average of all the growth patterns that we've seen to be able to keep it middle of the road. That way, should development decrease, should availability of funding for septic to sewer decrease the rate at which we're able to make those conversions, it's more of a middle of the road, a conservative estimate as to how we can move forward on these projects and phase those projects in, which we'll get into in a minute, but that gives you more operational control.
Is not a conservative estimate of our growth in the next 20 years.
Based off of we have ranges.
An increase in our population between 2000 and 2010. That's the largest increase in our population we've had. Since 2010 to today, we've had 11% increase in our growth. How do you get a 200% increase in our growth?
Based off of the numbers, it's all in the report. It graphically shows you the amount of the BEBR. They do an independent. We just pulled that information from them. They say that between now and 2040, you'll have anywhere between 104% to 134% growth in the county. So you would have essentially anywhere between an extra 4% to 30% more people in the county. Based off of your plan reviews and your certificates of occupancy, the growth rate on those.
You're not expressing it the percentage-wise increase, okay? 104 is not 100%, 104% increase.
1.04.
1.04.
It doesn't
It's,
say 1.04.
I understand.
it's
I
a
agree with Chuck.
104, okay.
And that doesn't say 2.04.
That should be a 4% growth, not 104%.
It should be a 4% growth. And
Yeah.
so all your numbers start to look crazy because you've got these weird growth numbers on it.
Yeah, he's right.
So,
Well,
you're telling me I'm going to have 180% of my wastewater treatment growth. Is that 80%? Is that 180%?
It's 80% if you look at the math.
Of current, it's 180%. So it's nearly double. This 204% is basically your system will double in capacity.
Can I clarify? You're not talking
Sir.
about population growth. You're talking about users growth. You're not talking about we're going from 34,000 people to 70,000 people. You're talking about users on the system.
That's yes. And we look.
to
both.
inside the thing.
Yeah,
Sometimes
But
it's
for the
not-
benefit of
looking
the
at-
public,
looking
I
at
don't want
both-
them watching at home and think that you're saying there's going to be 70,000 people here in 2 years.
No,
All
no,
there he's
and that's
talking
the-
about-
the
but on
Bureau of
that
Economic-
graph, Ralph, he's talking about population growth.
He's only
We're going to
projecting.
we're going from 31,000 to 33,000.
We're-
That's population growth.
Well, that's probably
And that's
realistic.
2,000 people.
That's realistic.
I didn't do that math. That's provided by the Bureau of Economic and Business Review. That's a
200%.
state-funded organization, and they provide a low, medium, and high growth rate for every county in the state of Florida. That's the numbers that they present. That's the growth
I think
rate.
they're realistic.
And all this is a target. It's a goal. It's like a,
That's
it's like
all
a
right.
budget.
It is. It helps. It just makes sure that we're looking towards it. And again, as I discussed further with this, when we get into actual alternatives that we're looking at for the system, they're phased so that you don't bite off more than you can chew at any given point in time. It allows you to. We have a timeline that we believe that the project would need to be completed in. However, the way it's phased, you can selectively move forward so that you're not overbuilding your system and overburdening the
Right, you said
residents of
you
Wakulla
stop,
County.
stop, go, just like what David said today.
Mm-hmm.
If the economy bottoms out, it stops, you're able to get to a stopping point, and then when it picks back up.
Exactly, and that was part of the planning, is to make sure that we had ideas of projects that you could start and stop and would allow us to do so without compromising the system's integrity.
So I think I heard you say we have about 8,000 users on the system, people.
You have
not-
about
not
8,000
households?
residents. That's not residents. I
Right.
believe it was 3,344 residential customers.
So if we
That's
didn't
individual
gain one more
connections.
person to population, but we got 4,000 people off of septic tanks onto sewer, that's a 50% growth as far as the demand on the system.
Exactly. Your system is growing without a population growth.
Well,
Right.
how many tanks are you planning to, with this whole program, to take off the system? How many septic tanks?
We've talked about
All of
we've talked about over the next 20 years, it'd be over 1,000 existing connections that we would have.
So you're only talking about 1,000 that this 33, this project is covering.
Some will be real growth and some will be moving from.
No, this is
septic.
1,000 septic to sewer.
I think the flow number is the number we need to, we don't need
Yeah.
to fixate it on the growth. The flow is the key.
Growth is just,
Back in the 90s, the plant flowed 0.6 MGD. Now it's at 0.6, 7? Above 0.7, so that's tripled since the 90s. So I think the flow is what we need to look at. Not there. I agree the math is wrong on the growth. It should be 4%. The difference between 31,600 and 33,000, not 104%. It's 4%. So I agree with what you're saying, but let's not get fixated on that so much as the flow at the plant. I mean, that's the number that's measured every
Flow
single
in the
day.
plant is what's important. How many sewer, but that's going to be determined by our population growth over the next 20 years, okay? We're going to get 200 gallons per connection over the next 20 years, okay? So how many 200 gallons a day per connection. So how many connections are we going to have? To go up to your number, how many we have to have? We have to have 9,000 new homes?
But he didn't use that, that's just a growth, the gauge. He didn't use that as a factor involving that.
He's saying the flow would go up to 1.18 MGD
Yeah.
in 20 years. I think that's probably low.
That's low.
So, I mean, their numbers are very, very conservative. Just not even doubling in the next 20 years.
And it's doubled since 90, right?
It's tripled since
Tripled.
90.
So that's what I mean, if you don't like the 204% growth rate, even if you look just as Commissioner Merritt mentioned, just at the flow that you've experienced at the plant, and project it forward, you're still 1.8 times higher in capacity than you are present day. And my number is only
You may or may
double.
not have to use, but it's there.
It's, yes.
Right.
Better to have capacity than be
Exactly.
over.
So the next section of the report, it revolves around, this will click forward. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide, it stopped clicking for me. Section 4 goes across the environmental impacts. We've reviewed the potential project areas, and there's a couple of undeveloped sites. Those have been reviewed. Actually, a biological assessment was done by somebody in our office. There was nothing of note as far as any sort of major environmental impact that would be done. All the projects would still have to be done in accordance to all state laws and regulations, and any items that are the normal things like the indigo snake or gopher tortoises. There's ways that those can be remedied if they're discovered on site at a point in the future. Yes, sir.
Is this the Alexander Road?
They looked at two sites. One's the site that the county already owns on Alexander Road. That's for a lift station. The other site that they looked at was the site behind lift station 76, behind the Jerry Moore lift station. Those are the two undeveloped pieces of property that are included in the report. It clicked for me this time. Okay, so section 5 begins to dive in on the actual alternatives that we looked at. We reviewed 3 different alternatives for what to do with the transmission system. The second alternative is what you'll see on the screen. It's the one that was selected. It breaks the system down into 4 phases for which upgrades would be completed. The first phase is to construct a 16-inch force main going from the Jerry Moore lift station to the wastewater plant along Floyd Gray Road, Friendship Church Road, through the National Forest there. I know that David's already working on potentially getting access to some of the land that's on the National Forest. That would not impact the National Forest. It would go in the existing roadbed area, so it would not have any adverse impacts through that area. That would be phase 1, and there's existing 12-inch and 8-inch force main that currently goes from Jerry Moore lift station to the wastewater plant along Coastal Highway, Sopchoppy Highway, up Lawhun Mill Road. That would be converted into a reuse main. There's a way that you can do that. So essentially you'd save some money on infrastructure for your reuse projects. The second phase would be to install a lift station along Alexander Road and then have the force main go down Raywinkle to tie into the existing force main on Highway 98. It would also include, in Part B of that Phase 2, include upgrades of some lift stations in that area and allow them to repump down to the Alexander lift station. What that does is that takes some of the pressure and flow off of Hickory Park, which is currently near capacity.
That would take Wakulla Springs, that would take the school, middle school, elementary school, all that off that line.
Farms, Hidden Meadows, Fox Run, Mallard Pond. It would provide a lot of additional capacity at the Hickory Park station. So between phases 1 and 2 will buy you a significant amount of time on being able to move projects forward. So we're hoping that's one of the things that we still have the plans moving forward, phase 3 and phase 4, but we really hope that by the time phase 1 and 2 is completed, that we'll be able to potentially take one of those pauses that we mentioned.
This won't necessarily reduce the head pressure on the line in Crawfordville though, right?
Not
That's
necessarily.
driven by the
Well,
Hickory pump.
Yeah,
the
well.
16-inch force main in phase 1, the Hickory Park force main would tie into it, and so there'd be a single 16 instead of a single 12 going to the wastewater plant. So it would, by the increase in diameter of that force main, decrease the pressure on the line.
I think it drops to an 8 right back here, right?
And that would be the other phase, is to take that 8 out.
And run it, because that makes that line
What
highly
we're gonna do is
pressurized.
run a 16 from where that 8 is all the way back to the
And leave the 12
lift
going down
station,
to...
leave the 12. But then what he's saying is we'll take the 12 and tie it into the 16 that's going down Floyd Gray, and that increase will lower the pressures in the Crawfordville
Y'all looked at
corridor.
running down, all the way down Lawhall Mill Road, right? And I guess that's not really...
This is the shortest route down there.
We also,
Because you have the Jerry Moore lift station, you gotta,
one of the alternatives also evaluated putting in 16-inch force main to go down the existing path, basically just to parallel it. And the right-of-way is very tight. We just did a project when we got rid of the MedArt lift station, and now you have 2 force mains. You've got a 10 and a 12 there. You've got a 6-inch reclaim line or reuse water line. There's fiber, and then on the other side of the road there's water, so it gets very tight in that right-of-way. That was another reason why we suggested going through the national
When we
forest.
got rid of the MedArt lift station, that also bumped the pressures up here, because that was a repump station. So now it's got to pump the additional 4, 5, 6
That's right.
miles to the plant and up to the headworks,
that's right.
Does.
where it didn't have to before. So that probably bumped the pressure up quite a bit.
It did. We saw some pressure increases through that project.
And they're fairly dramatic.
Well, it's got to pump 20 feet up the headworks.
Yep.
doesn't it?
The only question I have is,
Yes,
and I
sir.
should ask this day, if we're going from a 12 to a 16, is that supposed to be good for, I mean, how long is that supposed to be good for? What I'm asking is, I don't want to, say we're putting in a 16 when we should have put in a 20, maybe because I don't know. And then all of a sudden, 10 years from now, we're having to go back and run because we've outgrown that. So is that supposed to take care of this, where you have, because we're all these places that we did the 8 and the 12, now we're going back and putting 16. So my question was, I think that's what you explained to me today, was it because of the pressure of it? Or I mean,
It
am I
appeared.
making what I'm trying to say?
You're making
Now, we're coming back and now we should have put a 20 versus a 16.
You make complete sense with that, and yes, based off of what we've seen, it appears that this will be sufficient for the planning period.
But the problem with that, Mike, is I understand what you're saying, but you also have to maintain what's called scouring velocity, which I think is 3 feet per second.
It's 2, but we try on our designs to do 2.5 just to make
So
sure.
in other words, if you put a 48-inch pipe with the amount of sewer we got, it's going to go through it very slowly. It's all going to settle out in the pipe, and it's going to clog up.
And go septic too, right?
That's right.
Or you're not going to have enough, even if you can scour it, you're not going to have enough moving through the pipeline for it to have the correct volume exchange in the pipe.
Even a 12-inch pipe with the right, if a pump ran, say, half the time, which you don't want it to, that could flow millions and millions of gallons a day by itself. I think the main reason for running the 16 is to reuse that 12 for a reuse line, not necessarily because it's at capacity.
It is the length of the line and also the change in grade, the way it works to the wastewater plant. It was creating pretty high head pressures even without
I'm
anything
talking about
else on
going
the
from
system.
Jerry Moore lift station to
Yes,
the
sir.
high school.
Just between Jerry Moore and the high school. Well, it's only an 8-inch that's right there right now. So that really limits your capacity.
What we're looking at is to try to get at what you're trying to get at, Mike, is we think that by we're going to be splitting the system. Everything that'll be coming down 98 will have a 16-inch all the way to the plant, and then everything from Crawfordville north will have its own separate that'll go into the plant separately. Therefore, there's no fighting between the north and the east pump stations. What that will do is that'll probably, forever, that's probably as big as the force mains will need. Because based on our growth and what we see and the developable land, this should take care of us for the future.
That's my only thing. I don't want to go 10 years
Yeah,
from now.
we don't see us now. We could all be wrong, but we don't see we don't have the raw capacity, the raw land out there to be able to go higher than what's here.
2 parallel
Yeah,
lines.
you had 2 parallel 16s.
Furthermore,
You can flow, good gracious. You can
In
flow.
phase-
What's your planning period?
it's 20-year planning
So
period.
they're projecting this will be good for 20 years.
Yeah, and
But because like the 8-inch, it's already need replacing, correct, from the Jerry Moore already?
the 8-inch needed replacing after it was put in.
Yeah,
So it's
probably
already,
should
I
have
mean,
been an
that's
8-inch.
what I'm saying is we spent money for an 8-inch
Mm-hmm.
when it probably should have been a 12, I guess. at
That
the
was
time.
designed to do Shell Point, and we didn't have I guess we didn't know at the time the state was gonna give us money to put Wakulla Gardens
That's
on
right.
sewer,
Yeah.
which it now runs to it, right?
Right.
Things have changed pretty significantly
Things
from what
have
I
changed very
understand
significantly
since that
more.
design was done.
But this
It
will take
could not
care
have
of
been
it. This
anticipated.
takes care of it, and we're done, and we won't lose the 8-inch line. We'll pick it up as a reuse, so we're not losing that line. So yeah, we spent it, but we're, at the end of the day, it's recycling.
We had to put one in anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got to put one in anyway.
Another item that we'll be doing in phase 2 that will help a lot of this is we'll be putting in a SCADA system. Essentially what that is that allows it's a communication system for the lift stations, and it allows each one to talk to the other, to communicate with if it needs time to pump. Right now there's no way that the stations, they're all independent. They don't have a way of talking to each other. They don't know what the others are doing. All they can sense is essentially if the pressure goes up in the line and it's struggling, and really the station isn't smart enough to know what's going on. All it does is it sends a signal to whoever's on call at the wastewater plant should the level in the lift station rise to a high level alarm, and then they have to go out and figure out what's going on and make any sort of system adjustments. So by putting that communication system in line, it would essentially be like having personnel that all they're doing is monitoring how each station's operating, so that if there is the potential for them to fight each other, it's reducing the time during which it does, and allowing the alarms to be less frequent in the system.
And as Trevor said before we go on to the next slide, once we complete phases 1 and 2 of this section, we're going to pause. There'll be a purposeful pause in spending, and because and then we'll in fact, phase 3 would be the next one that we would do, which is be that line we were talking about here, getting the 16-inch up to the 12. Then our phase 4 on here, we're hoping that timing of putting the 16-inch down 319 will coincide with the future in 20 to 30 years, the future 4-laning. So that all we do is the state will pay for the 12, we'll pay for 4 inches of that. So that's the hope. That's what we're gearing towards. So
State will pay for it.
that's right. And the
What's your
state.
timeframe
That's
in
right.
phase 1 and 2?
What's that?
What's your timeframe in phase 1 and 2?
This year.
Skip ahead just a little bit and look at that. So we're looking at phase 1 and 2 to begin design in 2021, and have a completion date in 2022 and 2023, depending on the project, for phase 1 and 2 of the transmission
In fact,
system.
that's what we're going to be requesting SRF funding for, that we've turned the application in now for the engineering portion of that, of those 2 projects.
Phase 1A is a portion of that is the line that y'all voted on tonight to begin design for, which is between lift station 76 and the connection at 319, which is near Rocky's gas station. So basically from that section along Coastal Highway would be phase 1A. What we would be looking at doing immediately after that would be what's considered phase 1B, and then both A and B portions of phase 2, which is the Alexander lift station and the reroute of the force main in that area.
Which, like I say, we pause after that, but that's a pretty daggone major deal getting to that pause point.
So again, just to keep this back off and finish rolling through the transmission system, phase 3 would eliminate a choke point. There's a portion of 8-inch line that's between Hickory Park Lift Station and High Drive, and it then becomes 12-inch after that. Not sure exactly why it was 8-inch to begin with, but it is, and that's what we're dealing with. We've looked at it, ran it in the models, seen that if we go ahead and increase that to a 16-inch, which is what the rest of the line along 319 will eventually become, it creates a lot of additional capacity at Jerry Moore or not Jerry Moore, at Hickory, and it can reduce the horsepower required on those pumps. So it provides you with some O&M, operation and maintenance benefits as well, by decreasing the size of your pump station to still provide the same amount of flow.
I think it goes from a 12 to a 10 to an 8.
Phase 4 would be to upsize, as David mentioned, the force main between High Drive and all the way out to the wastewater treatment plant. That would allow then the system to actually split. So everything on 319 North would have one route to the wastewater plant. Everything coming from the east side of the county would have its own route. Panacea and Sop Choppy would, as they currently do, still have their own route, so it would help prevent those stations from fighting each other into the future, giving you more capacity. Essentially, it almost makes two systems where you had one going to the wastewater plant. The treatment system is considered in Section 6 of the report. We looked at a couple alternatives on it, and what we came to was that you're going to need 1.8 million gallons. Did it flip too far?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just let you do it, Jessica. If you take it to Section 6, page 10. It looks at the treatment system. What you're going to need is 1.8 million gallons per day of treatment capacity. That's based off of the flow rates, everything that we've looked at. And essentially what would be done is just to mirror the improvements that you currently did to take it from 0.6 to 1.2. You would just add another 0.6 to the plant. And there's some other pieces of equipment that would be needed. One item of which that'll help operations out a lot at the plant is an influent lift station or a pre-equalization basin. What that does is it essentially allows the operational personnel to shave the peaks off of the flow that's coming in. It allows them to better dose the flow through the plant and then provide you with a higher quality effluent.
No primary treatment?
Not as currently as planned.
And to let you know about the flows, in 2023, we'll be at a point where we're going to have to be under construction of a new plant. If everything keeps going the way it is currently, we're required by DEP this year to get the engineering done on our plant. So that'll be coming to you, this physical year. That'll be coming to you as well. So to actually get the design.
Even after the retrofit goes online?
Even after the retrofit goes online.
0.8?
And
80%, you got to start engineering?
So that's right.
During your lunch and supper flow, you're seeing regular flows over 1 million gallons.
And they use the maximum 3-month annual flow. And that is a little different than the regular flow. So that kicks it into, 2023, we got to be constructed.
They require you to start planning.
I thought the tank was supposed to solve that variation.
There is no tank.
No, you're talking about the equalization.
Equalization tank.
Yeah, that's separate than, we're talking about the actual flow into the plant. That's for the surges. Where we get these surges, it'll level that off.
Yeah, but right now we're at 0.8 million gallons a day.
That's right.
We've already built the plant for 1.2 million gallons a day, and now you want us to start, and we're only at 0.8, so we got 400,000 gallons a day space. You're going to tell me that's going to be used up in 2 years?
I think Ned said that we're peaking at 1 million now, correct?
At lunch and supper.
Well, you peak, but that's what the tank is for.
But we don't have the equalization basin.
Well, you can make the equalization basin, and that solves the
That'll
peaks.
help the 3-month average.
That's going to help your 3-month average, but even on I keep it all 3 ways. Even your regular rate in 2023, we're well up over 1 million gallons a day, and we're at 1.1 in 24, and 1.1 in 2023. So at that point in time, you have to be building a new wastewater treatment plant.
They kick in at like 80%,
Kicking at 80%.
They don't let you go to full capacity before you start planning.
And I think at 80 or 90%, you could have a moratorium on hookup.
So what we would do is get the engineering, hold on to the engineering, see how growth goes, and if growth all of a sudden stops, we won't build it. But if it does continue to go, then we'll have to crank things up in probably 22, 23, according to how everything goes. I track this once every month. Nanette sends me a report of all the folks that have tied in, and I track this every single month, and I tie it back to his wastewater flows to make sure the two marry, and they do. So that's what I'm saying. In 2023, we've got to do something.
I apologize leaving the podium for just a second. I just wanted to pull something from the report, make sure I had the dates right. But based off of the growth rate and what we're seeing, they look at the maximum 3-month average flows at the plant. And what we're seeing there is it would be exceeded in 2027, and DEP guidelines suggest that you begin planning and design 5 years prior to any exceedance, just to make sure that you're ahead. They don't want you to build anything, but they want you to go ahead and be doing your design so that you're not behind the 8 ball when it comes down to it. You're not at a capacity issue. So based on the projections, we see that at 2027, 5 years prior is 2022. So that's the reason for that timeline.
wastewater plant's designed for a certain hydraulic flow, and that's it. You know, you go over that, it starts seeing failures.
Mhm.
So that's
And
why
you
they
start
want
affecting the biological.
Yeah.
That's right.
And, you know, you want to be cautious and not over-design a plant either. You don't want too much capacity when you don't have enough.
That's why we're
And
doing
that's
modular.
the trick.
But that's why you plan 5 years, like DEP requires. You go ahead and plan 5 years ahead of time based off of what your projected flows are, and then you execute whenever you see if that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah,
We're actually building
last
like several plants out there on the site. We've got 2 right now, right?
We've got
I think-
2 getting ready, and this will be a 3rd. The last thing we want to do is build a plant and it doesn't have the flow to get to it. So it's a delicate balance, so that's the last thing we're going to want to do. So that's the reason we'll hold off as long as we possibly can before we build it.
So
The decision we'll make in 2022.
for the design of the plant.
The design of the plant, we're going to probably go ahead with that this year and go ahead and get that behind
It's
us.
a
This
0.6
physical year.
MGD package plant, right?
We put them off the shelf. What, about $100 off the shelf?
Just copy the old
Hey,
plan.
copy. That's what I told him. Just copy the plan you got.
We already have 2 plans, don't we?
Until 2022, phase 1?
Yeah. Well, the treatment plant itself, we're going to get the design done and we'll sit on it. And then based on development, that's when we'll say, okay, go. Because it takes about a year and a half to build one. So it's not an easy thing. So we depending on the contract.
So we mentioned that we would increase capacity by 0.6 MGD, 600,000 gallons a day. We mentioned about the influent lift station. A couple of other items that we included are an administration and maintenance building, which currently is, for all intents and purposes, is non-existent. It's a very, very small building, very, very small working area.
When we did they're not still in that trailer,
No,
are
that's
they?
a lab that we've built, a lab.
At least they got out of the trailer, right?
They got out of, they went from one trailer to a new, went from an old trailer to a newer trailer.
That's something.
So
But it's smaller.
that's an item we would want to make sure that we provide, and then some site paving just to make site access much easier. Jessica, if you go to number 7. Number 7, section 7 in the report talks about the discharge system. Basically, the things that we want to do is we want to convert, as we discussed earlier when we do the force main project, convert the existing 12 and 8-inch force main into a reuse main, which I've already discussed with DEP. And there's a way that you can permit that and make it happen. So we anticipate being able to do that and be able to get that to save costs with getting effluent out to the east end, where there's been a site identified that will be behind the Jerry Moore lift station site. We would want to acquire that land, which I believe is on the agenda tonight to begin discussing that, and be able to provide flow to that. So Jones Edmonds and Associates, another one of your consultants, has been doing some testing on this site based on preliminary information they provided to us. Somewhere between 1.4 to 1.6 million gallons could be applied to the site. The reason that you would need an additional site is you're permitted at 0.6 MGD at your treatment plant, spray fields. You're permitted for 0.6 MGD at the golf course, which without significant upgrades probably would not be able to be applied. So even in best case that you're able to get 0.6 at both of those, you're still lacking by 600,000 gallons a day.
So we are sending effluent to the golf course now?
No, not right now.
Not currently.
How are we getting rid of 0.8 MGD with 0.6
It's
MGD spray
mounding.
field?
It's mounding.
But they're letting us spray it out there.
There's no choice. And right now, we're mounding.
Which means it sits on the ground for a little while.
Well, no, they're so far, I don't think you've got any puddles yet, do you? Okay. No.
Yes.
It's mounding.
So it's definitely a need, and again, that was one of the items identified in the consent order was the nitrogen that was noticed in the groundwater at the monitoring wells at the spray field.
But not anymore, it's AWT now
after-
it's going on the spray field, right?
It will be AWT. It's not
It's a
currently.
mixture right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. It will be able to AWT, and that's the June project completion.
Right, you'll meet your nitrogen limits when the retrofit is complete in January, and then you'll hit AWT, which is also your phosphorus limits by June.
We'll hit the nitrogen, which is the most important, and then we'll hit
Have
the
we-
phosphorus in June.
Have we thought about using this reused water in other facilities down on 98? The school and the rec park?
The rec park, yeah.
How much could we put on there?
Probably 25,000 gallons a day, something like that, best.
Once the infrastructure is in, it'll be easily available to anyone along the route
Yeah.
to utilize it. So that's another added benefit with having this reuse line going in where it's going. Because you do have, like you said, you do have other facilities that may be able to utilize it. But nothing significant enough to decrease the total amount of capacity that you would need on the
It's spray
site.
field.
So that's what we're looking at, and then so that covers basically phase one of what we're looking at for the effluent project. Phase two is the section of 8-inch line that is between that site and the intersection at 319 and 98 is 8-inch. We would need to upsize that at least to a 12-inch to be able to get more capacity out to the site. And then the third phase would be to, and there's already been a study done on it, the existing spray fields at the wastewater plant, to convert those into rapid infiltration basins. Basically, it would just require less land, and it would allow expansion as the plant expands and needs more room for operations. It would allow them to sort of expand over towards the direction of where the spray field is, while still providing enough effluent.
And the good news is we would be, we would have basin integrity, meaning we're distributing some of our, stop chopping panaceas going back into the same basin that it's coming from, and then
You said that
Crawfordville, et cetera, would be
You
going
and I
into the
talked
basin.
about that. Did
That's
you tell
right.
DEP what you came up with?
Yep, we're going to. That is what we're going to go with.
Their concern was that we were taking wastewater from Panacea and putting it out where we're thinking about putting it. But I reminded David, we have a spray field in
That's
Otter
right.
Creek.
Yeah, so we're actually will keep it basin integrity. So this will actually help our basin.
What's the capacity of that station,
Which one?
Otter Creek?
Oh, that Otter Creek is the one we're talking about.
0.6.
It's
Okay.
0.6 right now. It was 1.2
I
will be in
thought
January.
Obviously, it's more like 0.8, but
You're talking about,
permitted for
It's-
0.6.
I thought you were saying there was another one that's not being used.
No.
No. The one we're going to vote on tonight would
Yeah.
basically serve the Crawfordville
Yeah.
basin.
Gotcha.
So on section 8 of the slides, we'll talk about a few different things in that section of the report. That's where it really dives into the selected alternatives, which are the ones that I just presented to you. There are other alternatives that we looked at, but based off of economics and any environmental, these are the alternatives that we determined would be best to pose to the county to review. So on these, you can look. There's a schedule. Basically, if nothing changes, we're anticipating moving forward with this over the next 5 years, all that's been presented. But again, as has been mentioned before tonight, I know that's a lot to bite off, and we want to make sure that we're looking between each of the individual phases that are completed. We want to make sure that we're not moving too fast or too slowly, and we can readdress this timeline as we move forward to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the county, meeting the needs of the system, and doing this at a proper pace. The next slide looks at the cost breakdown. It includes a deduction for some of the Restore Act funds that are already known, and it also looks at the basically the amortization of the loans at 0.421% over 10 years on the design and 0% over 20 years on the construction. Adding in what SRF requires is a 2% loan fee, service fee. That's every loan that they do, no matter what size it is. It's 2% fee that goes into the amortization of the loan. So anyways, this is the basic idea of what we'd be looking at. All of this information, as David has already mentioned, has been provided to Raftelis, who's doing your impact fee and rate study. They will incorporate everything that we have proposed into that to determine what sort of adjustments would need to be made to any of the rates, any of the fees, any of the access that is current on the books. So that we anticipate would be complete sometime potentially in January, but they're working on that based off the information that we provided them within the past few weeks, getting all this together. So ultimately in section 9 on the next slide, we talk about the implementation and compliance. That's part of what we're doing tonight. We have to have a public meeting to be able to address this, to present it to the public, present it to the board, what the plan is. There's a resolution that is before you to pass to adopt this plan, which will allow us to then move forward with trying to get funding from the state revolving fund, which is the loans that we talked about, the very low percent interest loans. And we also have planned to meet with Ms. Mary Gavin, who's with CERCAP. She used to be with the USDA. She's now with a program called CERCAP, and basically what she does is she helps find ways to bring as much funding into a project as possible. So what we presented to you tonight, for lack of a better term, is, worst case scenario of local financials that would be required to do this project. What we hope to achieve and what we will aggressively pursue are grant opportunities that will decrease the amount of local match required for this project, making this more financially feasible to you.
Motion to approve the resolution adopting the wastewater facilities plan for implementation of wastewater system improvements and authorizing the execution and submission of the wastewater facilities plan to FDP for purposes of a state revolving loans fund program, and approved to allow public comment.
That is item number 1. Do we have a second?
A second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
So how much, okay, you're going to do $33 million to expand our sewage treatment plant capacity by 600 million gallons, right?
600,000.
600,000 gallons, yes.
But it's not just the plant, it's the transmission capacity.
Bulk of that is the transmission.
Transmission's the big
Transmission
thing.
and discharge.
That's the problem we got.
Yeah, but we've already.
That's a smaller
can't-
number of those.
You can't get it to the plant the way it's set up now. It's bottlenecking in the system.
Okay. Well, yeah, we're already at capacity with all of our systems, right? That's what you're telling me. We've got,
No.
You're not at capacity.
We'll be at 1.2 MGD of
Yep.
capacity, right?
Right,
Once the
and-
retrofit is done, and our average annual right now is what, 0.8? Average annual daily?
so it's 0.8, and we don't have the capacity to move any more sewer to the system, to the plant.
No. We do. We have more capacity to this. The problem is as we move more, the pressures continue to get higher, and that's the reason we want to go ahead and do this.
Okay. Now,
It doesn't mean we can't move more. It just means that the
so
system pressures continue to get higher.
But we're spending these $30 million to expand our capacity to the whole system by 600,000 gallons.
No, the system, one part of that is the plant at 600,000 gallons a day. The treatment, the collection system is different than that. The collection system today, I don't know what it could deliver, but what the purpose of this is so it can deliver more wastewater at a lower pressure. That's the whole intent on this.
I know, but so you're trying to deliver more at a lower pressure.
Right.
Okay, to the plant and increase the plant capacity up to 1.8 million gallons. And we don't know what what our current capacity is for our transmission system to the plant.
You have several areas that are at or near capacity. Specifically, so the way your system works is you've got some what we call master lift stations that repump wastewater to the plant. Of those are the Jerry Moore lift station, which is lift station number 76 out near Spring Creek Highway and Highway 98. You have Hickory Park lift station, which is at Hickory Park. You have the Magnolia Gardens Master Lift Station, which is on Tafflinger Road. You have Sop Choppy Master, Panacea Master. Am I missing any?
Yeah, but those don't matter to what he's talking about.
Those aren't as those two at the end aren't as significant.
We have to
But-
remember that getting rid of the mid-art repump station caused the pressures to go up here. And we had to get rid of that lift station.
Well,
because-
yes.
Well, more and more is being tied to the Hickory Park lift station. Basically, any development that's done in this end of the county ends up at Hickory Park lift station,
Right.
or anything north. And it's really seeing that flow really coming in at this point.
And
So
that's
something's going to have to be done.
That's what we're in the process of. That's the reason for this. It fixes that very thing.
So,
It fixes the flows from
at
Hickory.
Hickory Park.
Mhm.
And Hickory Park's overloaded because all the new development north of there is flowing to Hickory Park.
Yeah,
Okay, and so we're building all this, and we're using BP funds and other grant funds to build
BP funds is
something.
not going to go towards Hickory Park.
Not going to go towards Hickory Park.
Hickory Park is all going to be access. That's all, we're going to borrow all that funding. Everything that'll affect that Hickory Park.
Okay, so we're spending $30 million for 600,000 gallons, so that's,
No, you can't look at it that way. The transmission system will be able to carry more than 1.8 million gallons a day at the end of the day. It'll probably carry probably double that at the end of the day if needed. You're thinking of the treatment, all we're going to add a train on of 600,000 gallons a day. Your collection system will be able to handle much more than that. It can handle what's there today plus double that.
We spent like 10 million on the current treatment system. That didn't get into the discharge or the transfer
That's
side.
right. And the only thing that the Restore Act is hitting on the transmission side at this point in time is the lift station 76 and the force main down Highway 98, and that's tied directly to the Wakulla, the septic, the sewer projects that we have going on there. And that's the only one that is tied to that. Everything else will be borne. All of this borrowing will be paid back by new development as it comes on board. But you'd also, the last thing you want to do is put in too much infrastructure ahead of your development. Then you have all kinds of issues and problems. You want to have it as almost at the same time or just behind development. You
And it
don't want to be
has
ahead
to
of it.
operate as an enterprise fund.
That's right. It has to operate as an enterprise
So
fund.
if it
That's right.
starts losing money, you have to raise
So
the
we
rates.
want this stuff to be at capacity. We want it to be overloaded. Then we build it and we get it. It's just like school systems. You have to overload them before you can build a new one.
But wastewater
So
works the exact opposite.
it's
You
just-
can't overload
You
it.
can't overload your wastewater plant, but you can tax your system. You want to tax it just as heavy as you can and then build. But you don't want to overbuild your system.
For the public watching at home, it's probably important to note that if you're not on the sewer plant, you're not paying this. This is not coming out of ad valorem taxes.
And that's right. And this will be born. What we're talking about here will be born with new growth. That's right.
well, as long as it's born with new growth, I'm fine with it. I just don't want to see BP funds and those type of funds used for this.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Everyone good?
Let's make sure we get the public.
Yes.
We got a motion. Did we get a second?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, very good. And we have one citizen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Harvey Lineback?
I'm Harvey Leinbach. I'm here. I live in Panacea, but I'm representing this Wakulla County Soil and Water Board. Y'all didn't get into the part about where this treated effluent was going to end up in that, what he was talking about on the development. I couldn't really see everything. But you can't, in this county, I hope everybody realizes that just because it goes out on the ground and goes away, somebody's going to drink it. Or it ends up out in the oysters and whatever else is out in the beds in the bay. And collecting up effluent and letting all that nutrient just go down into the water, it's a waste, and B, it's environmentally not good. There are hay farmers that would love to have that effluent sprayed on. Hay is a common product here in pasture in this county, and hay especially is tremendously hard on soil. It takes out a lot of fertilizer to grow hay, and you need water. And with this effluent, you get both at the same time.
No, actually, no, you wouldn't. This water wouldn't be good for hay because there are no nutrients in it, right?
Yeah, this
No
is,
nitrogen, no phosphorus.
there's very, very, very little nitrogen.
Where
or
did they
phosphorus.
go? It went into that treatment plant. Where did they go?
we take it out.
But where does it go? That's all I want to know. That's what makes
landfill, right?
It's sitting in a landfill in Campbellton, Alabama.
So you're telling
Florida,
me,
excuse me, Florida.
okay, you're saying that the nitrogen that comes out of the plant has less nitrogen in it than rainwater?
Not rainwater.
Not rainwater.
Well, that's, these people are using rainwater, okay, to water their crops, so,
I don't know, maybe it does.
Maybe it might.
But that, it's
as
still
good-
a
it's
waste
as
of
good
that
as-
resource.
It's as good as man can get it. It's,
well, that might be as good as man can get it, but
and it's also it's well below the minimum standard that DEP has set for the vent at Wakulla Springs as well, for nitrogen.
Well,
And
the other
also
thing,
realize this, we'll probably be putting this in a wetland feature before the rib system that'll take out what little bit of nitrogen is left, or phosphorus that is left in the system before it trickles down.
I think somebody should publicize that, and we'd like to see the people that advise us from the NRCS and the state of Florida. They want to know those things, because you couldn't put in an animal facility that was going to have all that effluent coming out of it. And here we got this and that. It doesn't seem to add up.
This will go through DEP and a lot of folks, so.
Taking
Bring it in.
taking nutrient waste to some other state isn't environmentally efficient either. I mean, it costs more to haul it away, because then you got to buy fertilizer and bring it all back again.
Thank you, sir.
So. Sorry, I ran out of time.
No, you're fine. Your point is well taken, but the fact remains, until we can figure out how to stop producing waste, we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it, and we want to try to make it as clean as possible.
So,
Thank you, sir.
as this comes forward, are we putting in artificial wetlands into these
That's something
ribs?
we've talked about, and we very well may do.
Because I cannot see how a rib, which is forcing the water into the ground,
No, it doesn't force it.
Letting it.
All gravity.
Percolate.
if you pile water on top of water, it creates weight, creates head pressure, forces it down. It's forcing the water into the ground. So,
Deep well injection is forcing into the ground, Chuck. Go ahead.
that's a pump system. That's putting water on top of water is still a weight. How do they pack the roads out there? They put dirt on top of dirt to force it and pack it.
Point taken. Point taken.
The same principle. So you're forcing the water into the ground faster than it would in other situations. Is this this water cleaner than comes from rainwater? If it isn't, then we need to do something to try to reduce the amount of nitrogens in this water, amount of nitrogen. So you can do bioreduction, in-ground biofilters, what they've developed for retention ponds, or you can build a wetland to take the nitrogen out as it passes through.
Now, aren't we going to AWT standards?
Yeah,
on this?
we're at a standard already where we don't have to do any of that unless we just
Is
think
it
we
less
want
than,
to.
is it drinking water standards?
It's getting pretty darn close.
So
Once you
just-
chlorinate it,
Wanna be sure.
you're about there. I understand what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it ain't like, it's kind of a misconception. It's like we're putting raw sewer out there. It's not.
I'm not saying raw sewer. You
This
couldn't
water
put
is
raw
as
sewer.
clean
Yeah,
as clean as any water in the state of Florida coming out of any wastewater treatment plant.
Apalachicola's got a wetland effluent discharge, and their monitoring requirements are a nightmare.
Yeah, and
Very, very, very.
very, and that's something we got to look at. But they also don't have the AWT standards.
No.
We went to the AWT standards to try to help get away from that. Now, we may have some wetland that we want to put ahead of it.
We're spraying it on
But
the golf course.
it's not required by permits. It's not required by DEP or the feds once we go to AWT. That's what I'm saying. We can do it if we want to.
If David Harvey, I guess, I don't want to call his name out, but if he wanted to spray this on his hay pasture,
Yeah.
all he have to do is tap it in the line and run it over and do it, right?
Exactly.
I'm sure we'd give it to him, just to get rid of it.
Just to get rid of it. But then, but yeah, I get you, but it's, the end of the day, it's not like, make it sound like we're pumping raw sewage out there. That's not it at all. I mean, this is as close to regular drinking water as you can get.
It's still, if we're forcing it into the ground, I recognize we need to get water back into the Spring Creek Basin because we're low on water in the Spring Creek Basin, and that's what this will do. But my concern is what's the amount of nitrogen entering the system through this?
3 parts per million at
And
worst.
What's rainwater? So that's the question.
Well, we can't, I don't know. I'd have to find out. It's according to where you are.
Google it.
Okay. Let's see.
But I mean, you're asking us to go to a standard that's well beyond.
I'm not asking you to go to a.
Yeah, you are.
I'm
You're
not
asking a
asking- I'm
standard.
asking-
When we go to a standard of rainwater versus what DEP requires us
See,
to
if you
do.
do a spray field, the plants in the spray field actually have a chance to take up some of the nitrogen.
Yep, and we'd have to
Okay.
triple the amount of land we buy. Then we can barely get enough land as it is to do this.
And we're talking about buying land for a spray field
Yeah,
later,
we're-
right?
That's right, and we may have to. But right now, if y'all want to go to Sprayfield, we'll triple that land, but you're going to triple your land, if not four times it. That's up to y'all.
Right, we're not
We
voting on
got an infinite amount of land. We only have so much land that'll meet this criteria, even for a spray field that's outside of a floodplain. Somebody's willing to sell, has the depth of water analysis, depth of water criteria, and has the right soil type. If you want to take it and us double that or triple that, we'll be glad to.
My motion was to approve the resolution. We get that out?
I did.
We can deal with that at the,
Yeah.
I think at
On that item.
21 maybe.
Yeah.
But this item we need to keep in mind, this is a plan. This is a wastewater 20-year plan with an estimated price tag and probably like budgets and everything else. It's going to be modified as more facts.
Well, and
become
we're
known.
flying at 30,000 feet. We're not down into the weeds on this.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Next, we'll go to item number 25 under general business.
Hold on, let me find it. Excuse me. This requests board approval to authorize the chairman to execute an economic development marketing grant application to Duke Energy Foundation on behalf
So
of
moved.
Wakulla EDC.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Miss Julie going to do a presentation or
Nope.
only if needed? All right, very good. We have a motion and a second. Any citizens? Any further discussion from the board?
No.
Hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0.
Good job, Beth.
Thank you. All right, that moves us to public hearing, item number 21.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item requests board approval to conduct the public hearing and consider a purchase and sale agreement for the acquisition of property on U.S. Highway 98.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any citizens? Discussion from the board.
So, we have not yet challenged how much water can be put on the golf course. We've put that infrastructure in, how many, 8 years ago?
Longer than that.
10 years ago? And we've never used it. Now we're buying infrastructure.
What? I'm sorry, Chuck, I missed what you said.
Now we're buying infrastructure.
I don't understand what you say about challenging the,
We've never used this thing. We don't know how much water it will
Tested
take.
it. We don't know how much
Yeah.
capacity it'll.
How much
Well, we had the soil
capacity?
analysis done for
soil
it.
analysis was done, yeah.
Well, we haven't dumped any water on it.
Right, but you
did a-
can't dump any, that's what I'm telling you, he can only pump 200,000 gallons a day. And you can't, on a golf course, you start putting 200,000 gallons a day on it, you'll see a big impact.
Are you talking about the golf
Big
course, or are
impact.
you talking about
Right,
this?
the golf course.
Talking about the golf course.
Okay, I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't tested the golf course and see how
We
much
can
water,
wait.
how much
We
we
can
can
wait.
get out there.
Well,
It's
I don't
just-
like, I'm sorry. I don't like the idea of being beheld to a private property owner. He could turn around one day and said, I don't want your effluent anymore. For whatever reason.
He could
then
sell
we're-
it for a housing
Then we're
development.
screwed. Then I'd rather, we own the land that we're spraying on. Now, if somebody wants to either buy it from us or we give it to them, fine, so we don't have to spray as much. But I really don't like the idea of we're asking, we're not even paying him for this, right? Or he's just taking the effluent.
Just
To
taking it.
save him money, he might decide, or somebody might buy the golf course and they say, we don't want the stigma of reuse water on our golf course, so you're cut off. And they could And then we got a real problem.
Well, that won't happen. Our zoning won't allow it to be anything but a golf course, will it?
No, but I'm just saying somebody could buy the golf course and they might say, I don't want your wastewater on my grass anymore. And then we don't have a way to get rid of it, right? And
It was
then-
a defunct golf course that wasn't being watered for a lot of years at one point anyway.
And it has never
Much rather
recovered
be
from
in
it.
charge of our own destiny. Much
My
rather.
thing is this right here, you know, as far as buying the property and stuff like that, I think we're getting a good deal on the property. They're not making any more of it. From the studies that was showed that it was prime for what we were looking at, and I don't want to take a chance because I know that, you know, from what I understand, David, he already had somebody willing to buy it, and we're getting it for $47.50 an acre, which is a good deal. So if we decide not to buy it, who's to sit there and say that he doesn't come and say, okay, forget it, I'm going to go to sell it to Joe Blow for $8,000 an acre. I think $47.50 is not a bad deal, you know, for it after looking at what we're trying to do.
We tried for years to get more spray field next to Otter Creek, but Forest Service, we're going to try to do a land swap. Never going to happen. I told David to look in Sop Choppy area to see somewhere, but there's just no larger tracts of property with suitable percolation rates that you can, you know,
Yeah, this
spray effluent on.
was, the idea was, we look for land, I've looked for land now for 5 years, and like I say, it's not easy to find, and I'm not saying it's not the only track out there that we could buy, but relying on the golf course to take any more than 200,000 gallons a day, that's
I don't
just
want to
not,
rely
that's
on to
just
take
not,
anything.
but it's not feasible on a golf course. It just isn't. You can't dispose, number one, he can't pump that. Secondly, he's not going to pump that every day. There's no way. And I put golf courses in and effluent, spray effluent all over the United States, and the max we've ever done was 250, max.
Has Gowdy ever asked about, you know, Mr. Gowdy? I mean, for all the hay fields that he does, I know you don't own them.
Well, the problem is where do you get the collection system?
Yeah, but
You gotta
again,
have
you
the
wouldn't
system.
own the property. So whoever could change your mind and say, I don't want, they might hate the government, I don't know, whatever, we don't want you on our land anymore.
And that's what this does.
You're
This
in
gives
trouble.
us that backup, and we can always sell to whoever we want to, or give, or whatever. But we always know at the end of the day, in a rain event or whatever.
Take care of ourselves.
We come here and we got it. We'll take care of ourselves. We're
100%
done.
agree.
We don't have to rely on anybody.
I agree with Randy. We need certainty, and we certainly appreciate anyone that wants to take it and diminish that capacity for us, but we definitely need the certainty.
I mean, I think it'd be nice if we never split effluent on this property, because we had enough people that wanted
Oh,
to take
yeah.
it for hay or whatever, that'd be great, but I'm not willing to bet on it.
Well, and plus we've got the pump station. We've already got lines there, so part of that just plugs in nicely.
We got a motion on the floor.
We have further discussion? Hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
Summer?
All right. That ends our public hearing. We'll go to planning and zoning, item number 22.
Yes, this is a request for the board's consideration to accept the filing of an application to close and abandon all roads within the Hobbiton subdivision. These roads are identified as West March Road, Troll Lane, and Bilbo Baggins Drive.
Where
The
that came from.
applicant is Seabolt Investments, who is also the primary lot owner within this platted subdivision. There are two additional landowners which own a total of 4 platted lots within the subdivision. Both of these landowners have also issued letters in support of the request for the closing and abandonment of the road. The county has never maintained these roads, although they are dedicated to the public on the plat, which is why this comes before you this evening. And the county also does not have any infrastructure currently in place. Staff does have some concerns about the individual property owners that own within this subdivision outside of the Seabolt investment, having legal access for ingress, egress, and utilities should the board decide to abandon and close these roads permanently.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to table this item and give the applicant time to come back with an adequate easement. And I say this, I have no problem with abandoning the roads, none whatsoever. But I don't want to get into a situation like we're in Bettywood, where, you know, homeowners contacted me, it's in my district, they wanted to improve their road. Somebody else owns the road, and they don't like each other. So that person won't let them go in and grade their own road they get to their house with. I'm not saying that's the case in theirs. I'm sure they get along fine. It may cost $200 to get a legal description for this easement for ingress, egress, and utilities, and just be done with it, and I'd be happy to vote for it. But my motion right now is to table it.
And I agree with Randy on that, because I think if we don't, the liability will come back on the
Yes,
county.
exactly.
And I think we'll be liable for it.
And again, if it
So-
comes back with a proper easement, I'd be happy to vote for it.
And that's as me.
Is that a
as well.
motion and a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a discussion here. What if we vote to approve it contingent upon that, so it doesn't have to come back? And we approve it contingent upon a proper legal description?
How would we ever reverse that, though, say they didn't decide?
Well, this meeting is just to accept the application and basically authorize staff to advertise. So if
Oh,
the
okay, I
board,
thought this was the actual thing.
yeah, no, so if the board wants to add that condition to it, we can skip this step in the future versus just tabling it. I can work with
I'll
Mr.
amend my
Jones
motion then, to make
receive
that
those items and advertise it at the appropriate
To
time.
make a motion of condition of approval is that they provide you with a satisfactory ingress, egress, utility easement for the property owners. And I thought we were voting on the actual item tonight. So that,
Yeah.
better off with you?
I think that would be great.
Second?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that.
Yep. We do have one citizen, Dr. Jones.
No comment needed. Appreciate the effort on our behalf.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any further discussion? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. All righty, let's see, that ends planning and zoning, takes us to commissioner agenda items. We have the one item, which is the appointment to our various committees.
As long as Quincy's on the canvassing board, I'm fine with
And
everything.
Randy's the alternate.
I don't want to be the alternate.
I
Mr.
have-
Kemp here just got elected.
I have one proposed change, and it would affect Commissioner Kemp. I am currently the primary on the Wakulla Coalition for Youth, and we've got you listed as an alternate.
I'll do it.
I'd recommend that we swap that with your, with your current job and your law enforcement background. I think you would probably be better suited to be the primary. If you can't make it, let me know, and I'll
I'm good with it.
continue to show up.
I'm good with that.
Other than that, Quincy's still canvassing board, right?
Do we have a motion to approve with that change?
Yes, motion to approve.
Second.
Quincy's actually,
Do you have an alternate on there?
We.
No, we need to get an alternate.
I'll nominate Mike Kemp as the alternate.
Randy.
You got to do it at least once.
Are you on the canvassing board? No.
I've done it
so-
too many times.
I know, so you need to come back. Why don't you just come back and be the alternate?
Had enough of
It's
that.
not like I'm not going to be there.
Done it 2 or 3 times.
You good with that?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll try.
So,
Unless they
motion
leave me there.
and second with those
I'll
two
amend my-
changes.
Correct.
Very
Yes,
good.
sir.
Further discussion? Any citizens on that? Further discussion from the board? Hear none, all in favor?
Sorry. Never mind.
Go ahead.
No, Mike got it.
The canvassing,
I think Commissioner Kemp made the second, correct?
the canvassing board is something everyone should experience at least once, right, Chuck?
Just once.
No, I said at least. I've done it twice, so,
I've done it 3 times now,
well, 4 is even better.
3 times? When did you do it 3 times?
because we had a special election.
Oh, yeah, I had 3 recounts.
And you did a great job.
You did a great job.
All right, all for the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, that ends Commissioner agenda items. County Attorney, anything tonight?
Brief announcement. One, we are working on hopefully a final settlement on the lawsuit involving Driftwood Drive and hope to bring that back to you, hopefully the first meeting in January, depending on how quickly we can get all the parties to agree on the wording. And then just Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Great. Thank you very much.
Right.
County Administrator.
I think we said enough.
Really?
Okay. Mr. Stephen Wessel, is that right? Is he still here? No? Okay. That ends our citizens to be heard. Discussion items from commissioners.
None. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Welcome aboard. Yep.
None?
Merry Christmas.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Piece of cake, right, Mike?
Yeah, I'll,
Whatever.